Welcome to True Out Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. Okay, this is part 2 of addictions. Now, what we were planning on is doing the generally accepted stuff, and then doing that live, and then cutting it off to the stuff that, like nasty stuff, like vitamins and stuff that would be censored by the media. But we just got, we're transferring about 40 hours of content to our new site. So we're going to do it next week. So hopefully we're going to run through the whole thing, even the stuff that I think would be censored. I toned it down a little bit, but we should be okay. The biggest thing when we're talking about addictions, how do you get over it? Okay, last week we talked about, because I mean, this is my amazing family we've had experience with addiction. And I'm talking deaths, murder, suicide, all stuff that I've seen since I was a little kid. So we got a personal stake in this. But when you're when you're in that addiction, it's actually a drive. Has anyone been here addicted before? Like to work? No. I like work. Okay, so there's a lot of different addictions you can have. But when you look at this, you got to deal with the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. And we were talking maybe plans that we could have like last week. Now, this is going to be the site, because we're going to talk about information that hopefully will be accepted by the Ministry of Truth. Or I don't know what you want to call them. But the Dr. B VIP, this is kind of, if you can hear my voice, you're part of the resistance. This is where we can give you all of our data, all of our PDF, because, I mean, we are being shadow banned. With 700,000 YouTube's subscribers, we used to get 10, 20,000 hits in the first couple of days. Totally shadow banned, we're lucky to get 1,000. Okay, even though we still have the number of subscribers. So they're sequestering our information. You used to be able to download the videos. You can't do that anymore. Again, shadow banning, okay? Because this information is not part of what you should disseminate or you should be aware of, okay? We will control that. So this is a site where we're going to give you all the data, the PowerPoints, everything in PDF. So this is where the information gets disseminated. So if somebody talks to you about, I don't know, let's talk about a PCR test that, if you cycle it over 25 times, there's no virus inside, you can't even grow it. Okay, and typically viruses or the tests are done about 37 to 38 cycles, which means it's completely worthless. But we can't talk about that right now. Okay, what we are going to talk about is, we've got this Dr. B VIP site. It'll be $297 a month or $29 a year. You'd be supporting us, but you get the information. Okay, and if you pay for something, it's less censorable. So that's the key. We also have Extreme Health Academy. If you've gone through a health challenge, particularly with the insane restrictions, and don't worry, you may have heard that Thanksgiving has been canceled. Okay, no, it hasn't been canceled. Only 34 states are canceling it. Okay, I think mainly New York. And you have to be limited to 10 people at Thanksgiving. Okay, but now funerals can have 30. So if you have a funeral for the turkey, you can have 30 people in attendance. Okay, just want to let you know that the world is insane. But the Extreme Health Academy is $20 a month, but you got the forums, everything else. So let's look at this. Okay, let's look at the reality. Because you're looking at, when we're talking about addictions, we got to get cleaned up. We got to get off of the drugs. But first, and we're going to talk about plant-based medicines. We don't want you to jump from one drug to another. Okay, yeah, I'm addicted on Coke. I want to get that 5-MeO DMT so I can get that so I can get off of it. No, we're going to talk about the heart attack risk, okay, and how your brain can literally blow up, okay, stroke and heart attack. So we have to look at the population. This is the sickest population of animals the world has ever seen. You're talking a 1 in 2 cancer rate. You're talking 6 out of 10 have a chronic illness or disease. And this is brought to you by those that are advocating lockdown. Okay, so we got heart disease killing about 600,000. You've got cancer killing about 600,000. Oh, by the way, what do the experts say cause of heart disease and cancer is? Unknown. Right. You want these guys to decide in your health. Okay, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, strokes, Alzheimer's, all of this stuff. Okay, now, the original model experts before this entire fiasco was started, we're talking around 2 million people were going to die from the virus. It's a beer reference. Okay, because we're trying to get away from the censors. However, 2.8 million people die every year. 7,700 people die every day in America on an average day. And that's what you get when you get 330 million people hanging out together. But when we're looking at this, we're talking over a couple million die from these diseases every year. And no one's saying anything about it. Now, 54% of our kids. So I want you to own this, that this is the sickest animal population ever. So if we're going to get this animal population healthy, and this population is addicted to drugs, they're addicted to these substances to survive in this psychotic environment. And that's the bottom friggin' line. So if we're not correcting the toxicity and deficiency and dealing effectively with the stressors, people will not get better. So it's not one drug for another drug. It's not, oh, I'm going to do ayahuasca now and then I can go home and do coke on the weekends. That's ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to see a dentist, then I'll do some meth. I'm glad somebody got that one. Okay, it's not as good as religious humor, but you kind of get it. In order to get rid of the addictions, you have to get rid of the cause. And the cause is going to be physical, chemical, or emotional stress. That's it. It's not genetics. Because you're not defective that way. Okay? You are adapting to stress. You are adapting to stress. Now, one of the things that we're experiencing, particularly with the wipeout of schools and holidays and community gatherings and social interactions, a massive rise in suicide. I mean, before all of this insanity, we're looking at a rise in death of our children. Our children. Will this help them? Think of any memory that you had in school. Did it involve social interaction? Like, I don't know, recess, lunch, okay? Passing a note in school, looking at that person, smile. Do I look happy? You don't friggin' know. We use a lot more than words to communicate. And one smile, one frown, one everything. And these kids are already in a stress state. And one of the things that we can't talk about is about this virus or the effective nature or any of that stuff. That's why we have to switch it from the version that could be censored to a version that couldn't be censored. Because if we talk about the lockdown, actually, and this was done months ago, they're saying there's going to be 4 times the amount of deaths from deaths of despair. And this is suicide, loss of job. No, I'm sorry, you are not essential, you are essential. Okay, what does that do to your psyche? And particularly if you're trying to, feed your family? Okay, active duty troops. Active duty troops, you're looking at least more than a trooper a day dies. But when you encompass everyone, all the people in the military, now we can say high stress, absolutely. We can say neurotoxicity from the number of vaccines, absolutely. Can we say separated from the family or in extremely stressful circumstances? All of that stuff is absolutely. Okay, you're looking at 20 people a day die from suicide. Okay, that's criminal. Yes, they are getting good medications. Okay, and the side effect of those medications typically reads suicide and suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation. And that means that these people are not being taken care of. And they're the ones on the front line. They're the ones that pledge to defend the Constitution of this United States. You're too young to remember this, but we used to have a Bill of Rights. Okay, freedom of speech and things. Okay. I said Constitution. He said, what? Wasn't that a ship? No, it was a ship too. I just wanted to make sure you got that. Okay, so this is what we have to do before you try plant medicines. So you're not switching one drug for the other. That doesn't make sense. You got to look at the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. How do you identify and correct the physical stressors? You got to get a digital x-ray. That's good. That way we'll find some structural abnormalities, understanding that an abnormal structure communicates to the brain abnormally, communicates to that cerebellum and causes dysfunction of the frontal lobe. And thermography, would that be cool? Yeah, because I could identify toxins, lymph flow, some type of backup of the system. What about autonomic function? Okay, to see if you're in a fight or flight state or your body is functioning correctly or adapting correctly. That would be kind of cool to know, particularly if you're going to go through a detoxing. And if you don't go through the detoxing, your risk of cardiac events goes through the roof. Blood cell analysis, wouldn't that be healthy to know that your blood can handle stressors or that it's already under stress, that you got to detox and give the body nutrients before you go through a withdrawal symptom. Chemical stressors. How about cleaning the arteries, healing the gut? This is how you correct it. You can clean the arteries. I'm going to show you how. You can heal the gut. That's the enteric brain. Mineral deficiencies. This is what Coke and alcohol does. Okay, opioids just destroy the liver and brain. Dental toxicity is huge. I know it's amazing, but the American Dental Association last month came out and said, oh my God, amalgam fillings, they're neurotoxic. Okay. They've been approved for 125 years. Okay. They just found out brain damage or cancer if you got those. So, dealing with that would be smart. Emotional stressors. If you're dealing with the physical and you're dealing with the chemical, but you don't deal with the emotional cause. Remember, emotions are chemicals secreted by how the brain perceives the environment. And that's what we were talking about last week. So this is hugely important. Addressing these three prepares your body to literally change. Now, heart attacks. Now, this is hugely important. When we look at heart attacks and opioids, back in the late 90s, I was still a teacher up at Cleveland Chiropractic, Los Angeles. We were doing a cardiac arrhythmia study. And so one of our doctors, lead doctor, was at this place getting a bunch of the 24-hour cardiac monitors. And in the shop where he was getting this, he met another doctor who had an opioid recovery center for rich Hong Kong businessmen. And this was back when Hong Kong was separate. I know, again, this is really like old people talk because this was like 2 years ago. Okay, but when you look at this, that addiction center, he was losing a lot of people from heart attacks. And there's actually a mechanism of how, and this is your off button. When we talk about how stress kills, there is a method that your body has inside of its intelligence to turn your body off, okay, when presented with the extreme stressors. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on x-ray, and you will see it. But what's interesting, the results show that opium addiction is a strong risk factor for myocardial infarction. And I'm going to show how you can actually see that on x-rays. Now, deaths of despair, okay, opioid addicts, okay, pain. When you have physical, chemical, or emotional pain, is opioids a great choice, a great way to go? Yeah, it's easy, readily available. Doctors are prescribing it like crazy, okay, and hence our addiction. It's fantastic. The problem is, who is this affecting? Now, think of this. We have deaths of despair going on that are going to be 4 times the amount of people die from deaths of despair than die from the virus. That's a thank you. Thank you for translating. Okay, so when we look at this, most of the victims of this phenomenon are white, low-income men. And this is going to be the addictions, the opioid addictions. The problem is that doesn't cover the deaths of despair incomplete. In comparison to the infective endocarditis patient who did not abuse drugs, these patients were more likely to struggle with alcoholism and suffer from HIV and hepatitis. So we're looking at an entire swath of Americans that have been labeled not essential, that have burned through their stimulus check, that don't have that feeling of giving back to society, that feel isolated. Why? Because they're told by their government to isolate. What does this do to their psyche and brain? Does it help them making contributing factors in society, or are they just destroyed? So I just want you to understand that this is devastating. So what we've got is the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. And this is where that opioid crisis affects you. Sympathetic means your fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest, digest, and repair. Your heart has both of those nerve supplies. One of the nerve supplies, the sympathetic, is the top of the rib cage. The parasympathetic's in the neck. Now, parasympathetic also utilizes these neurotransmitters. Now, nitric oxide is hugely important, and you're going to get this through breathing in and breathing out through the nose, in through and out through the nose. That actually makes your body generate nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator. That means it opens up the blood vessels. So if you have human tissue and you want to increase oxygen to it, you want to vasodilate. That's what nitric oxide works. And that's also why hyperbaric chambers are working, to get the oxygen back in the system. The problem, though, this says heart rate variability, and that's what we utilize to check patients to see what their autonomic balance is. With diabetes mellitus, ischemic heart disease, and congestive heart failure, they are finding this, that heart attacks are typically a low-functioning parasympathetic. Because that parasympathetic, baby, that's like the diesel engine of the heart. It just keeps going 24/7 from just when you're a couple of weeks after gestation, few weeks after gestation, to when you die. So this baby doesn't give up. Now, the sympathetic is for active, okay, and that goes in occasionally. So if you have low-functioning parasympathetic, your sympathetic, the fight or flight, is going to kick in, and this is where tachycardia, bradycardia all come in, or fast or slow heart rate. Now, parasympathetic, you got a couple of nerves. They're both located at the brainstem. When we look at this, medications, and it's interesting, if you take a medication that forces your body to increase nitric oxide production, it tends to have a rebound effect where it goes down. Now, think of this. Nitric oxide opens up the blood vessels to get oxygen to the tissue. Beta blockers close it down, shut it down. And this is a blood pressure drug. You might be saying, well, wait a second. A blood pressure drug, doesn't that lower blood pressure? Yeah, it's also lowering oxygen to the brain and the tissue. So medications used in cardiology upregulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which actually causes a rebound effect, making the parasympathetic activity worse. And that is where heart attacks happen. Okay, this one's walking on ice. To talk about vitamin C cleaning the arteries. Okay, no. I was actually waiting for a lightning bolt from the CDC. Okay, I guess it's okay. Thank you, Lord Fauci. Okay. Turns out that vitamin C is good for you. Okay, here's the University of Oregon State and about Linus Pauling Institute, endothelial dysfunction. The measurement of brachial artery flow. Now, this is the flow of blood through an artery. 214, 44 randomized controlled trials in subjects with or without chronic disease summarize the effect of supplemental vitamin C on endothelial function by measuring the flow-mediated dilation. 19 studies assessing forearm blood and 20 studies by pulse wave analysis in 5 trials. And what they found, all of these different trials, so it's not me saying it, these different trials from Oregon State, okay, improved endothelial function was observed with daily vitamin C dose of 500 milligrams. So it turns out, and this is one of the things that human animals can't produce themselves, so that you got to get from dietary sources. So it's one of the most important nutrients you can have. What does the current medical deities recommend? Have you heard of the aspirin a day? And it does work. It does work according to this study. And in fact, they checked 100,000 people, 13 different countries, that if 100,000 people take this drug, okay, 33 lives will be saved. Of course, 117 will die of gastrointestinal bleeding and 8 to 10 will die of stroke. So you'll lose about 120, but you save 40. Now, you might be saying to yourself, because I mean, the people that directed the study, clearly there is an incredibly fine balance between possible benefits and risk of intervention. We need to be extremely careful about over-promoting aspirin without first having fully understood these negative side effects. This right here, I put this study in to have you to explain a little bit more clear about how plant medicines work and the absolute dichotomy or insanity of what medications are. Now just think, okay, I give one drug. What do you want to give? Advil, Motrin, Aleve? I'm talking the really deadly ones, the ones that are responsible for 20% of all heart attacks and destroy joint cartilage? Or aspirin? Okay, you're right. It's crappy on top of poopy. Okay, so let's just say we take a drug. Now this drug is going to have an effect of, what do you think? Pain relief. Okay, maybe. If I give it to everybody in the front row, are they going to all experience pain relief? Some might not. Are they all going to have the same effect? No. Some might not. Is one person going to have a little gastrointestinal problem or this or that? Yeah. So since we're selling this drug and it's a patentable drug, then we call those side effects. Side effects. Now, what's interesting is, no, it's only an effect, but it's going to affect this person different than this person, and this person's going to metabolize it different. And then if this person stays up late and this person sleeps good, or this person had a meat meal, okay, followed by a person that's eaten a vegetarian, they're all going to metabolize the drug different. It's the same thing with plant medicines, except plant medicines, they're called adaptogens. And this means each person is going to have a different effect, and they understand that. Okay, but in crazy medical world, okay, everybody's going to have the same effect. Oh, you didn't react that way? You had a side effect. It's your fault. Seriously. Okay. And we know that blood pressure medications actually lower blood pressure, but they also increase risk of stroke. What is that? Side effect. Yeah, that's if you're working for the drug company. Otherwise, you say that's an effect, baby. Okay. So why? Because if you lower your blood pressure got to be here. You lower it, those arteries got to constrict in order to get it back up, like putting your thumb over the hose. So it just doesn't make any sense. Cholesterol drugs, the drugs they use to give your arteries to clean, to stop cholesterol forming in there, increase plaquing of the arteries and increase heart failure. No. It's the side effect. Cholesterol therapy decreases heart muscle function. And I'm putting this up there because, again, you cannot put an addict on plant medicines unless you detox the system. This is the sickest animal species on the planet. Okay, and so you got to detox the system first. Look, cholesterol-lowering drugs decrease the immune system. So could this be other chronic illnesses or diseases? Yes or yes? Absolutely. Now, properly prescribed medicine, that means the right drug at the right time in the right dosage. Okay, so we're talking the appropriate diagnosis, 128,000 people a year die from that on purpose. Okay, because they're trying to help them with this chemical that has a different effect in everyone. Why? Because the philosophy is wrong. It's wrong. You're not a bunch of chemicals and a bunch of collection of organs, and you just give a chemical to change it. How do we know it's wrong? Institutional corruption, pharmaceutical, and the myth of safe and effective drugs. That myth of safe and effective drugs, what I described is every drug. Every drug. They all have different effects on each person based on how you metabolize it. Now, heart attacks. Since we're talking about heart attacks and opioid withdrawal, it's also on cocaine withdrawal, it's on alcohol. Why? Because we got a very sick population and they're adapting to this drug that either stimulates the sympathetic or parasympathetic. They're adapted to it. So let's look at heart attacks. Now, If we talk about the theory of heart attacks from being clogged arteries, all the medical doctors in the room will say, yeah, clogged artery, baby. Why? $33 billion are for stents alone, okay, every year. Now, this is finding with an angiogram, which is not very accurate, and putting a wire in there and opening up the cage. And we know that they have medicated stents, that there are tons of lawsuits, but the mechanical action of doing that. Of course, I'm going to show you that you can clean the arteries with vitamin C and L-lysine, which actually helps your body, but we're not going to talk about that. Just look at heart attacks. Now, the clogged artery theory is a theory, but it has an entire industry built around it. So what we're going to look at is data that shows it's the nervous system, okay? Because when they look at this, they're looking for clogged arteries bad enough to cause a heart attack, and they only found it in 20 to 40% of the cases. 20% in one study, 40% in another. That means that, well, heart attacks, if they're not coming from the clogged arteries, between 60 and 80% of heart attacks are coming from neurologic sources or from the nervous system. Now, the theory is that the arteries get blocked, okay, bad luck or bad genes, your choice, okay, or toxic environment, and they get blocked, and that interrupts the blood flow, and then this causes lack of blood flow to the tissue dies, and then, heart attack occurs. Now, it's interesting because the clogged in the arteries don't happen where the blood flows. It happens underneath this inner layer called an endothelium. And that inner layer the clogs happen underneath. And, when we talk about the clogged arteries, how the plaquing actually occurs in the arteries, we talk about the blood vessels of the vasovasorums. Because I'm telling you, in the heart, the cadavers that we dissected, you could actually put your finger inside of an aorta and you could feel the plaquing underneath the endothelial layer, because it would plaque the large arteries. It wouldn't plaque the smaller arteries. So it actually has to do with the damage to the arterial wall. Just little side note. Now, in the 70s, in Heidelberg, the first major autopsy study of myocardial infarctions, heart attacks, in Heidelberg in the 70s. The study found thrombosis, or the clogging of the arteries to cause the myocardial infarction, was found in 20% of the cases. Another one back in 2004, largest study, found sufficient thrombosis in 41% of the cases. So you might be thinking, well, if the clogged artery theory is wrong 60 to 80% of the time, there's got to be something else. So let's look at the structure. Now, you've got a heart, okay, that is the pump initiator. Your blood actually flows through because your arteries constrict and dilate. The pump initiates it, but the artery constricting and dilating is what moves that blood through everything. Now, you've got a sensor in the neck. And this sensor, it's one of the branches off the carotid, comes up and it splits into internal and external. And there's a pressure sensor and a carbon dioxide, or a chemosensor. So it senses the carbon dioxide levels of the blood, and it senses the blood pressure. So if carbon dioxide levels go up, the heart rate goes up to lower this. So you're getting blood to the lungs faster. You're getting rid of the carbon dioxide, which is an acid. And then when the carbon dioxide levels go lower, the heart rate slows down so the carbon dioxide levels can go back up. So this is a great way to regulate pH. It's called respiration. Yeah, although when I just breathed out, there's a lot more stuff than just carbon dioxide going out. There's moisture, there's bacteria, there's all sorts of different pathogens. That's why covering your or limiting how your body exhales air is not good for you. Now, so when we look at glyphosates, this again, we got a toxic deficient patient or population. But when we know that medications deplete your body's nutrients, we're talking vitamin C and minerals from cocaine, alcohol, and opioids, it just destroys your gut. Add into the glyphosates, and this is in most of the fast foods that you're going to be consuming if you're in this lifestyle. And when we look at this, all sex hormones, cholesterol, estrogen, testosterone, On the other side, you have neurotransmitters, dopamine, melatonin, serotonin, adrenaline. All of those transport sulfates. They're all derived from this pathway called glyphosates glyphosates disrupt. So this means every neurotransmitter, so anxiety, stress, brain fog, depression, sexual dysfunction, immune system dysfunction, are from this glyphosates. And that's the sprayed on thing. And you might say, hey, I eat mainly organic except for bread. Well, they're spraying wheat with this stuff so it desiccates up. So this is just about everywhere. It's a mineral chelator. That means if you lose your minerals, you can't utilize your vitamins. And this thing chelates and gets them out of your system. Now, let's look at how the body works. Okay, this is the mechanical action. Now, imagine if your body was intelligent, had an intelligent design, and were designed to live here. That's right, Victor. No masks, and you'd actually be able to live in here, strengthen your immune system, but don't talk about that stuff. So irritating. Your body has an off button. Okay, and this is literally how stress kills. Then you've heard about heart attacks and you've seen them on the news or the movies, that if somebody has a heart attack, they grab their left arm, left jaw, and this. That's because the heart rests on the diaphragm on the left. And if you irritate that, that increases the tone of the left trapezius. The center of that trapezius muscle is T1 through T4, and that's also happens to be the sympathetic nerve supply to the heart. Now the liver, okay, and the gallbladder refer to the right trapezius, and this has to do with your embryologic origin. And so if the liver has to process opioids, if it has to process adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones, that increases in tone. And that's why chiropractors have to understand is that right shoulder pain from a gallbladder, liver, toxins, or from a pinched nerve, or somebody actually hurt their shoulder. So think of this. The liver's got to process the stress hormones. So physical, chemical, emotional stress, your liver's got to process it. That increases the tone of this. So it's also every stressor, every physical, chemical, or emotional stressor. The body secretes these stress hormones so that you can adapt to it. So that increases that tone of that right trap. Increases. Finally, eventually, you've reached the limit of what you can adapt to. This fires a sympathetic charge down to the heart, putting the heart in ventricular fibrillation. That's the big muscles on the bottom, stopping the heart. That is literally how stress kills. And this is what happens when people are going through an opioid detox, because their body is already in a stress state and you've pushed them beyond the limit without detoxing. This is where heart attacks occur. So can you take care or address the physical stressors? Absolutely, you can. Absolutely. I just talked to a friend of mine who, maybe you don't have this, but friends don't follow your advice. Yeah, I love the heck out of this gal. And she says, look, I got cardiac arrhythmias. I said, no shit. You got a reverse curve in the neck and a massive subluxation pattern in the upper thoracic. I'd be surprised if you don't have it. Okay, it just fix the problem, find it. And then that will de-stress out the person. So you got to deal with the physical stressor. You can see this person here, clogged arteries, no heart attack. And it's just like crazy. She's got a massive stress there just waiting. And you see the wires on that in the chest? That means she had open heart surgery. Did they fix the structural problem that the nerve supply to the heart? No. You're looking at a massive structural deviation, and they've already popped open the chest to replace whatever, maybe a bypass or a valve or whatever, but they're not looking at the nerves that supply the heart. Yes, it is criminal. Why? Because people aren't appreciating that the body is designed to live here. Okay? You were designed to live in a community. We're supposed to be here. Now, here's a patient. This is the scariest one. Now, this patient is actually here at her office, low-functioning parasympathetic after cardiac stents and a bypass. Low-functioning parasympathetic is the biggest red flashing light on the planet for heart attack. This is a heart attack waiting to happen. And he had the stents put in just a few months before this reading. So it was like, buddy, we got to get you in. And we were adjusting him 3 times a day. I think it was, I'm looking for the date on here, but I think it was only about 3 weeks that we redid the test, because I love this guy. He's cool. Okay, and his wife is a jewel. I mean, they're just the neatest couple you ever saw. And they've been together a long time, and it'd be suck for her to go out and start dating again. So we had to keep this guy alive, plus I like him. Okay, and sure enough, I mean, we're talking like 3-4 weeks later, it goes from the dangerous heart attack where the parasympathetic is low to a normal, balanced autonomic function. But how did we do it? Did we do it by just adjusting it? No. Adjusting him, absolutely, but also getting his blood cleaned up, getting him on an organic plant-based diet, doing juicing and blending to handle to give the antioxidants in the system so that his body could regenerate. And then, did we teach him how to sleep good? Absolutely, so the body can renew at night. Do we teach him how to handle the emotional component? Because I'm telling you, if you've had a heart operation, you have anxiety and stress afterwards, which is normal. Okay, in crazy world, they just drug you. Here's a patient who, again, the totally cool guy. He was here a few years ago, and you go see the picture on the left. There's no pacemaker there. And I said, buddy, you got to get this thing fixed. Oh, yeah, but it doesn't hurt at all, doc. I'm just fine. Okay. He moves away, I think it was to Arizona for a while, comes back, and he's got a pacemaker. Yeah, doc, it was weird, just what you said started to happen. Okay, autonomic nervous system function is the key to chronic critical illness. People have to start looking at this. By people, I mean these guys in white jackets that haven't a clue, that are trained by the pharmaceutical industry, that you're a chemical being, that they give a toxic chemical to balance your physiology, and then hope like hell you're not going to get all the effects of that drug, just the one that they're kind of hoping for, So this is where I would normally stop this, okay? But I would also take out some of the vitamin C. So I would talk about the physical, chemical, and emotional stressors, and then normally we would shift this from the live version on whichever platform you're looking at, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, to the Dr. B VIP site, where then you could get the handouts and everything else. Because there's a lot of stuff we can't talk about. We can't talk about the great reset of the Davos Summit. So what's going to happen next year? We can't talk about the restrictions. Oh, how many people know the restrictions in December? Raise your hand. Not really? You don't know. Yeah, you just know they're going to be different. I know. I don't know either. Okay, so and we can't talk about the V word. Okay, not V for vendetta, but I think it is a vendetta against mankind. Okay, now it's interesting. The guy that runs this, his name's Johnny. I have no a relationship with this clinic at all. It just happens to be in Rosarita, plant-based medicines. The guy is cool, honest, and he's got good integrity. Okay, but I have no other relationship other than if I have opioid addicts or anybody with alcohol or drug addiction, I'm going to clean them up, get them healthy, and then send them to the guy. Okay, because there's some centers out there that aren't really honorable, but this guy is. He's cool. But let's look at the brain function. When we're looking at addictions, we're looking at anxiety, stress, depression, suicide. All of this stuff is a function of the frontal lobe. Now, the frontal lobe gets its information from the cerebellum. So this is anxiety, stress, depression, impulse control. Then we've got the gut-brain connection. This is how you restore that neurotransmitter production, okay, by changing the gut. You've got to get that person out of the fight or flight state. And what do we have to do as well? Get them out of the low-functioning parasympathetic. See how we do that? Sympathetic or fight or flight is up. That parasympathetic's got to be down. And what's the main cause of heart attacks? Low-functioning parasympathetic, at least 60 to 80% of the time. The enteric nervous system, the gut-brain connection. So people that are anxiety and stressed and depressed and everything else, no, they are not going to Whole Foods getting organic. Okay, they're just surviving. I mean, they're just trying to get through the next day. So 90% of the brain's information, and this is the vagus nerve coming down, it supplies everything, does every excretion, movement, filtration, everything. That's only 10% of it. 90% is sensory. 90% of that nerve in the gut communicates back up to the brain. This is the brilliance of the body. But people aren't appreciating this, obviously, because if you've got an altered brain function, you've got an altered gut function. That's it. That's where they're seeing massive changes in dementia by giving coconut oil, high fat. Massive changes in dementia and autism by changing fecal transplants. I mean, literally changing the gut flora. It's amazing. The gut-brain axis, bidirectional communication between this central and enteric nervous system, linking emotional and cognitive centers of the brain with peripheral intestinal functions. Let me see, we got somebody that's addicted to something, whatever. Okay, food, shopping, drugs, whatever. Okay, they're doing this addiction at detriment of their life. Do they have emotional or cognitive issues? Yes or yes? Should we look at the gut? I know I'm going way too fast. Okay. The psychophysiological effects of psychobiotics. What this is they're changing the gut flora, seeing a change in brain function. Alzheimer's disease. If you change the gut flora, it helps it. Lou Gehrig's disease and autism, a spectrum disorder, bacterial infections, diabetes, post-inflammatory anxiety. How many, I mean, when you look at 20 veterans a day dying, okay, do you think that they've had some kind of post-inflammatory processes going on? Absolutely. So the genetically modified foods, we got to get that. Cardiovascular disease risk. And again, this is vitamin C. You can clean the arteries using Linus Pauling's formula, just using vitamin C. We recommend vitamin C and L-lysine to just get those arteries clean. Juicing and blending, that is soluble fibers, that cleans it. But over the years, buildup and accumulated damage to the coronary arteries, coronary heart disease could culminate in a myocardial infarction or heart attack. Supplementation with vitamin C, intake of greater than 400 milligrams a day for a mean of 10 years, not dietary vitamin C, but intake was inversely associated with coronary heart disease. In English, this means you take vitamin C in, you have less heart attack risk. I know. Wow! Why couldn't they say that? No, the ingesting of vitamin C is inversely associated with heart attacks. Yeah, okay. In spite of the variable association, depending on the source, these analyses indicate an overall inverse association with higher vitamin C intake and risk of heart attacks. Now, this is the 5-MeO and ibogaine. Ibogaine is a plant-derived alkaloid from dissociative psychedelic that demonstrates an anti-addictive properties and several substance abuse, including alcohol. Also, 5-MeO DMT. This is the frog venom that you've heard so much about from the Sonoran frogs. And none of the frogs are harmed in this. And what's interesting, the 5-MeO DMT practitioners, it's a spiritual effect. When they go to harvest the toads, they make sure the toads aren't harmed at all. And it's interesting, this was a great study where they're doing a brain scan while these people are doing it. And what they found, 31-year-old military veteran, moderate to severe alcohol, had a massive hallucinogenic effect. Now, it's interesting because the 5-MeO DMT and the ibogaine, they don't have addictive properties. Think of that, a psychedelic, and this is similar to a substance secreted by your brain, doesn't have addictive properties. You go through the experience and you're not craving more, But you cannot do these plant medicines unless you've detoxed your system. Okay, does that make sense? When we look at it, ayahuasca, Wiley Gray, brilliant, I think he's a psychologist, but again, big advocate for protecting our military. MDMA, this is also called ecstasy, that you can use at raves and stuff, but it works really, really good on addictive personalities or addictive problems. So there's so many drugs out there. Now, there's a lot of centers for ayahuasca. There's very few centers for ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT. There's no centers for MDMA. Why? Because there's a prejudice nature against this. because it is extremely effective and virtually non-toxic if you do this. Breakthrough therapy is using psychedelics to treat PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder are on the horizon, but not legally available, leaving many veterans on their own to discover effective modalities outside the mainstream. I've sent patients, I've sent relatives down to Peru to an ayahuasca ceremony. Why? I mean, just to have that experience under a spiritual nature. So this way, I mean, think of this. If you're an addict, you got guilt. Yes or yes? Yeah. Do you have trouble interacting or scared in interacting with people? More than likely, because you got that guilt. And that's a big deal. So if you can go to somebody like a shaman or somebody that cares and loves you and realizes that this is your adaptation to chronic physical, chemical, emotional stress. Okay, this is the best thing that you could do because you didn't have a plan or a map, okay, to deal with life's challenges. And this helps you. It does help you. A single dose of 5-MeO-DMT stimulates cell proliferation. That means it actually regenerates cells because the 5-MeO-DMT is very similar to a molecule your brain secretes. It's also called the God molecule. Recently, it's been suggested that DMT analogs may be used in the treatment of mood disorders. There's a strong link between altered neurogenesis and mood disorders. We tested 5-MeO-DMT. It's capable of increasing DG cell proliferation. This means you take this, it builds new cells. Wow, that's huge. It's regenerating the brain. Now, our findings show that 5-MeO-DMT affects neurogenesis, and this effect may contribute to the known antidepressant properties of DMT. So this is starting to change how the brain works. It's starting to rewire the brain through psychedelics. I mean, it's amazing. We know that mitochondrial and mood disorders, anxiety, stress, depression, schizophrenia, autism, once this, and this is the powerhouses of the body. So if we look at anything that negatively affects cell production or cell cell processes, like let's say, because a cell is alive, it has to take in nutrients, produce proteins, eliminate waste products. That's what the cell does. Anything that helps that helps you. Anything that limits that is going to limit you. Like the mask reference? Okay. Mitochondria, again, when there's too much inflammation and too many nerve cells die, mental health problems result. Do you think that this might be a contributing factor to the multitude of vaccines that the military gets, causing chronic inflammation, leading to mood disorders? Could that be? It could be. Okay, what about the diet, nutrition? Those MREs, do they have healthy nutrients in there or enough preservatives to make your body look like a, mummy? Yeah, our cells have DNA in both our mitochondrial as well as the nucleus of our cells. Both types are susceptible changes called mutations. They beat up the DNA, causing more inflammation. And what are we doing to our kids? You're talking 72 doses of 17 different vaccines. Each time you're getting a vaccine, you're triggering your inflammatory response. Do we have inflammatory diseases in our entire population? Think of brain inflammation. That's called autism, dementia, anxiety. Think of gut inflammation, inflammatory bowel disorders. How important is the gut and the brain connection? It's vital. It's everything. So we're looking at inflammation of the lungs, asthma. We're looking at inflammation of every area of the body because we're training our population to respond with inflammatory processes. And look, it's bad for the brain. Your body already has a pharmacy built in. It's called an endogenous pharmacotherapy. And if we can stimulate your body to secrete the substances that you need, and I'm talking benzodiazepams, I mean the real ones, the ones that your body creates that have no negative effects. It's literally built by your body for your body in the right doses at the right time. SSRIs, suicidality, violence, and mania caused by the drug given to people who have anxiety and stress. How does this work? It's unknown. It's believed to slow down the uptake of serotonin. Does it? Nobody knows. What are the effects of this? We give it to 10 people in the front row. Some people are going to have an effect. Some people are not going to have an effect. Some people are going to have anxiety greater. Some people might not even be here from it. Antidepressants, addictive and dangerous. They affect every aspect of the body. This is why. And what do they do for people? When you're addicted to something, are you happy and joyous? Maybe during the addiction, absolutely. That's why it's fun to do. Okay, sometimes it's not fun to do. And when I was staying at this halfway house when I was a little kid with my dad, I saw people coming in there shaking like crazy. Okay, they called it the DTs. And I was asking my dad, why are they doing that? I said, well, that's the alcohol. And then, they're drinking like aftershave or mouthwash or anything just to get through. I mean, it's, and then you're going to give somebody a detoxing or this drugs? It's nuts. Omega-3 fatty acids. So imagine if you took somebody that's addicted and you knew that omega-3 fatty acids would help that brain, help that body, and help them get better. And there's no negative effects of this. You might burp like a fish, but it's okay. They have non-burping omega-3s. But when we look at this, mechanisms by which aggressive and depressive disorders may be exacerbated by nutritional deficiencies in omega-3 fatty acids are considered. Optimal intakes of omega-3 fatty acids during early development and adulthood shows considerable promise in preventing aggression and hostility. Would this help your teenager who's been an inflammatory process because you no longer have rights of them, the state owns them, and you have to vaccinate in order to get him into school? So you no longer have parental rights. Okay? You don't need to vaccinate. He just has to stay home. You can't get an education. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to worry about any forced vaccination or anything. You just won't need to drive or fly or file taxes or vote or anything. Okay? Yeah, fine. No coercion. We have to get this information out. Okay, this site, it's going to be up over the next couple of days. We've got to disseminate this. If you're getting this now, stop it, back it up, screenshot it. I'm going to give you the PowerPoints in PDF format. So all you got to do is cut and paste, and disseminate it. So if you have somebody taking an antidepressant, okay, bitch, and send them the article on that. Okay, if you got somebody that's anxiety and stress and depressed and they eat friggin' fast food every day, send them the omega-3 one. If you've got somebody that's interested in the plant-based, medicines, but they just want to get stoned, but they're addicts now, say, hey, you can't do that. It's not good for your heart. Okay, because lives are on the line. The more insane, and figure 34 states are requiring this. What does that mean? 16 or not. So we can actually look at people. So when someone's giving you a dirty look, you can say, look, 16 states don't require masks. I'm up with from with them. So we got to get this information out to change this because the world is going insane. And it's controlled by media in order to get this out. And this is a media platform that is tenuous at best. I mean, these guys are going to pull this plug quickly. So when I say that I'm trying to get this site up as quick as I can, this is part, and I mellowed it out quite a bit because I don't want them, really coming, shutting it down in the next month. Okay, because if they do, I'll be in the parking lot. Okay, we have to get this. People are dying because of the lack of this information. Now, we also have got the Dr. John Bergman site. Of course, they can take that over. We've got Extreme Health Academy, which is amazing. Library, and it's lbry.tv. That one's a lot easier to navigate than BitChute, but BitChute's good too. Next week, we're probably going to divide it up into half, and we're going to talk about immune system, how to strengthen it. And when I say strengthening the immune system, That's one part of the conversation that you do not hear anymore. Cases are rising. Look at the cases everywhere. Okay, and we'll talk about cycle thresholds, and you'll find out that the majority of thresholds that they take that little bit of swab that's going in your nose and they duplicate it up to around 37, 38, 40, 40, 45 times. And when you get up to there, you're getting around 90% positive. Even though if you duplicate that test over 25 times, you're not going to really grow a viable product. So that means that it probably wasn't even there. So we can shut down the stupid positive cases by just limiting the cycle to say, I don't know, 20, 15. That way you can find out if there's like a viral load, but also it says on the studies, on the PCR test, that it's not for diagnostic, it's only for research. So we're misusing the test, misusing the data, misusing their public, misusing everything. It's time we take it back. Thank you very much.